Hey there, and welcome to another Dungeon Coach, Dungeon Master breakdown of Curse of Strahd. This is session 30 at this point now of the campaign, and this session was wild. So spoiler warnings for Curse of Strahd. We are in the town of Vallaki. Some stuff's going down, and there's your spoiler warning. And this is mainly Dungeon Master tips on what I thought was going to happen and then what actually happened, because this session went wildly different than what I intended, and I foresaw this happening, and I did a little bit of different prep this time. First tip, I guess, is going to start off there is... whenever you end a session when the players could go in all these different types of directions and then there's going to be some big stuff happening, I still wanted to do some loose prep because things can go so differently. And if there's some sort of uncertainty of paths to take at the beginning of a session, don't plan too terribly much. It's the best to end a session whenever they're like, all right, we're going this way. We're going to open the door to this dungeon and we end the session. Okay, cool. And now you can super prep that and you'd be super good to go. Here, it was a little bit up in the air. So here's how the whole session went. I had to start off the session in a little bit of a retcon situation. Basically, what happened was at the end of one session, there was some magic items that I had to give out. And if you watched last week's episode, session 29, I gave them a bunch of magic items that I didn't know what they did yet. It was just a chest of magic items that I had not prepared what those magic items did yet because things went wild and crazy in that session as well. So I had to come up with that. So at the very beginning of the session, we're like, hey, you guys found some magic items. Let's go through that right now. And we went through the magic items. So I'm going to show this right here on my screen right now. This is my Curse of Strahd Notion binder available on my Patreon and also on Patreon if you want to watch the live play of these games, because it was a wild session. You can join Patreon. It's there's tiers that are available for free to just join, check it out, just get the links. You can watch this playlist from here and be able to watch it. Cool. And then higher tiers are this campaign binder, which has every single thing in Curse of Strahd in it. But if we go to the town of Vallaki, there's the whole town of Vallaki. But the main thing that we started off in session 30, here we go. The recap of what happened last time, reminders for myself, and here's those magic items. A magic item loot chest of all of these magic items. I made up these magic items that all, during session prep, I just thought of a cool spell, thought of a weird magic item to make it that spell. Super cool. I got inspiration from, movies and other things like that. I just wanted to put a bunch of fun little magic items in this because it would make sense because they found a magic item loot chest from previous adventurers who had came and gone. So that was the start of the session. And then we did this skill challenge. And if you want to stop the skill challenge, this is how the skill challenge went of what happened for this group of people that was assaulting the church while the player characters are off trying to assassinate the burgomaster. The party was trying to go assassinate the burgomaster of the town, the mayor basically, and they got turned on by another rival adventuring group as a whole thing. And then at the end of the session I described, they come back to a scene where the church has been attacked. The church of Vallaki, where Irina was and where the bones were. Two very, very important things were there, and it was attacked and assaulted. So what I did is I did a skill challenge where they needed 10 successes, right? 10 successes, and all they had was 7 checks to do it in. There was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 checks to be able to do it, and that's where it all went down. And the DC was 15. I told them all that up beforehand, and it was crazy. The percent chance that they succeeded at this was about 25%. I'm interested to see if people did the math on that, if they come up with something else. But the modifiers of my players, the modifiers of the DC that was set, the number of things they needed, all that kind of stuff. It was not set in their favor. I told them it was going to be very difficult for them to do, and they used some inspiration dice and some other things to be able to get these numbers up there, and just barely succeeded. It was crazy. They succeeded. Now, here's some things that I changed on the Dungeon Master backend to make it look even more cinematic. There was one roll right here of the 2 bodyguards. One of the player characters described it through roleplay things. They hired 2 bodyguards to guard the church. So they hired 2 bodyguards. So when I was going through my checks, and they kept making checks, and if you aren't familiar with skill challenges, every time they make a check, they have to hit a certain DC. If they beat that DC, then they get a success point, and they can keep building up success points. So they had already amassed a bunch of success points. I was like, wow, okay, they're doing very well right now. So I only had 1 bodyguard roll. So this is the Dungeon Master tip here, is that to have branched paths to intervene or not on how things are going. I want this to be close. And I knew that there was 2, possibly 3 rolls that happened after this. So as the skill challenge happens, I have this right here as a potential help for them, and this right here, whoa, as a potential help for them, right? There's going to be a potential explosion that went off. There was a trap that had set in the church as a final little +10 to see if they could maybe get it, keep it really close and have that really close feel, that cinematic feeling at the end of a challenge. So everything was going really well, so I had the bodyguards be just 1 roll. If it was not going really well and they were rolling super poorly, and this, oh man, this isn't even, we're not even close. This isn't even, oh man, that's not what the feel I want to give to them. So if things are going bad, I would have had, all right, you had 2 bodyguards there, they each get a roll. Ooh, awesome, we each get a roll, and then maybe we could bring some hope back into this thing. But things were going very well, so I described it as, you got 2 bodyguards there. I need you to make 1 roll for the bodyguards. See how well the bodyguards do at fighting these people off, protecting the church. There we go. And then we got all the way down. They had 1 success point left they needed. They needed 1 more. So I described to them that said, this is the last check. That's a lie. There was a potential final secret check that I did not tell them about, that I would have revealed to them and been like, all right, look, there's actually because they did have the bones were protected by a ward of some kind that would explode with holy magic, and that was going to be the final check. And if things were really bad, and I would have had like, all right, here we go, and Irina, okay, cool, and I would describe some sort, if it was a failure, I describe they go to the bones and then it triggers the trap. And they'd be like, oh my gosh, the trap, that's right. There's 1 more final roll. We never ended up getting there because I built the hype roll up for this Irina moment, right? They only needed 1 more success point. So I said, everything's done. This is the final check. There's nothing left. And I referenced the bones had a little thing that is wrapped up in we already reconciled that. That's already gone off. It's protected the thing. Everything's gone. This is the final stand of Irina, protecting. She needs to get so we set the whole stage, right? So now this was the final roll, and Irina made the final roll, and Irina succeeded, and they survived. I had no idea that I was not ready for that. I had a whole list of things planned and prepared for that night, where Finian would have these things happen, Lars and Pug at the church would see these things happen, Felix would see this thing happen. I had all these different scenes ready and prepared. But the big thing that I did the light. This was my light prep. This is the whole thing. It's all right here on the screen right now. Lady Voctor. She had plans. This was the plans. And if she wasn't attacked, she was going to have a town meeting in the morning to draw people away from the church again, to attack again, which is what she did. And then she had soulless guards. She had villagers that were helping with her. Kirill, the werewolf leader of the werewolves, was going to be here. She had Vistani agents, and she was going to do a ritual to sacrifice the bones. Oh my gosh, there's the whole thing. Now, what actually ended up happening was they succeeded. Irina was not kidnapped. The bones were not taken. That was crazy. They used some of their magic items in creative ways, and they found and tracked down these the wolves were on the another thing how this game works, how TTRPGs work in general, is these random rolls matter, because Pug described the paladin, described looking out to see they got a natural 20 and found werewolves in the woods. And then because she saw werewolves in the woods, everybody came in over, and then they tracked it back to the Voctor house. And because they tracked it back to the Voctor house, they knew what was going on. And they all went to bed. They woke up the next morning, and there was a big town festival, or a town meeting that was had, and Lady Voctor tried to pin it on them. And there's this whole scene, this opening scene about, oh, here we go, this is what's going to happen. We have the Fate Weavers, which is the player character group of the players. They killed the burgomaster, and there's this social skill challenge, social interaction, a social combat, you could say, of, no, you did this, no, you did that, you shouldn't be the burgomaster, we should have this should be a democracy, we should be able to choose who we it was this whole thing, right? And then another offhanded role was whenever Felix the rogue, who has contracted lycanthropy of a raven, the therianthropy of a raven, whatever, is up high in the above, makes another perception check there, see if they can see anything. Can I see any of the werewolves? They specifically asked to see if there's any of the werewolves in the party. I was like, you know what? Yeah, they'd be kind of lurking around. And they over it was like 26 or something. You spot one of the werewolves, and then in the whole aftermath, there's this whole scene where Lars the Bard is socially just interacting and gets a mutiny, starts a riot against Lady Voctor, and she gets overwhelmed and flooded and put into the stocks. It's this whole thing. So there's this revolt happening where the city's coming together and revolting against Lady Voctor. They're happy that the burgomaster's dead, and Lars is like relishing in this whole moment here, right? And then the rest of the party, the Raven or the Rogue, sees the werewolf slink back and take off. And he's like, I'm going to follow him. And everybody follows him. And they're heading back to the church. Oh no, something's wrong with the church. And they head back to the church. And they see that the Vistani, and this is all from my little thing here. I was like, what would they do? It was all right here. The Vistani were going to be the ones to go sneak in there and capture and take the bones, because it's empty and it's vacant, right? So almost all of this, I'm just improvising this whole session on what would happen. And only reason I was able to do this so easily is I knew what the motivations and plans of Lady Voctor were. I knew she had the werewolves in her back pocket. I knew she had the Vistani in her back pocket. And I had a couple other things I knew that was going to fall into place. And it just made sense. The entire session just made sense as I just made it up on the way, all the way through. So there's this whole chase scene where they're going back to the church. The Vistani steal the bones, and then the wolves catch up to the Vistani, and they're running together. And then the 3-player characters of the Paladin, the Cleric, and the Rogue attack him in the streets, and it's this whole scuffle. Kirill, the leader of the werewolves, comes up and then runs off to the side and escapes because things went south too quick. All meanwhile, Lars the Bard is over there having the social interaction to rally the riot and reel them in, and he hosts a democracy. He gets a vote going. He asks the people who wants to be the next burgomaster. He has Erwin volunteer, the leader of the owner of the Blue Water Inn. Irina volunteers herself, and then a random person from the crowd. It's a funny little NPC that my group has that they like. He's a hobo shoe cleaner. Then he's gonna run for burgomaster. So the interesting thing here is another Dungeon Master note here too, is Lars the Bard, the player of Lars the Bard, is not a huge, combat aficionado inside of combat, does all these crazy things. He doesn't shine as much in combat, but dear God, does he shine in these type of moments. He is a exploration mode, even a little bit of social in there. And he, in this moment, and as a Dungeon Master, I pinged back and forth. So I did one round of combat, and I went to Lars. What are you doing in the city? Let's have the vote. We're going to do this thing. Make a persuasion check for me. Awesome, cool. Back to the streets, and we're in the combat. So I was still doing rounds around the table, keeping everybody engaged. But I was scene changing from the combat in the streets, running around trying to get the bones back, over back to the town and the uproar of what happened after the social situation with Lady Voctor, putting her in the stocks, having a vote. Everybody's going to vote for the next mayor, and we made rolls for it. It was a whole fun thing, and even the players noted and said, and this was like, it made my heart warm. They didn't realize they made my heart warm. Like, man, this is such a tonal shift, because we're going from this funny electoral vote of who's going to be the next burgomaster of Vallaki to, oh my God, we got to get the bones back. We got to keep them safe. Oh my God. And that's the type of thing. You want to hit those emotional spectrums across the session. So that went super well. The new mayor of Vallaki is Erwin, who's a perfect fit. I could go off on that, why he's such a perfect fit, but that was awesome role play stuff there. And then meanwhile in the streets, they get the bones back. They have the bones. They take them back to the church. They put the bones back. They did it. Oh my gosh. So now at the end of the session, they ended with a new burgomaster, Lady Voctor in the stocks, overwhelmed by the town that she tried to take over herself. The werewolves have fled the city and they're gone. The Vistani who were killed in the streets, and City of Vallaki's theirs. The mayor of the Vallaki is one of their best friend NPCs of Erwin, a were-raven who's the one who turned Felix the Rogue into a were-raven, and now the city is protected by the Keepers of the Feather were-ravens. It's insane. So absolutely loved it. I have no idea where the next session is going to start, and I ended the session in a way that I hate, in the way that I just described and gave advice not to do, but it just made sense. It was the time of the session wrap up, and I was like, I don't want to just keep lingering here. What are you guys going to do next? We're going to end the session. So we ended the session in the victory that they just had in Vallaki. It's so crazy, so wild. So now I'm going to think about some things that are going to happen. What, anything else bad left here? What's missing pieces? What am I missing? What am I thinking? I'm going to come up with some stuff to kind of throw at them while they're in Vallaki, because now it's something to get in my Dungeon Master head. All of the nuggets that I had to spur them on towards the end, spur them on towards Strahd, now are gone. I was going to kidnap Irina and take her to Strahd's castle. I was going to take the bones and destroy. Like, all of those things are gone now. And I also, as a Dungeon Master, don't want to overhit the bones. Like, oh, the bones. I don't want to overhandle, like, oh, all I'm doing is trying to get the bones. They win as far as that concerned. I am as a Dungeon Master forgetting about the bones in the church. I'm going to let them take that win, and unless something else comes up that makes sense, they win, right? So cool. I'm going to let them sit with that win because they earned it. They freaking earned it. So now it's going to be, what's next? What is going to come on next? I think I have one of the NPCs. I forget his name. The good guy werewolf that they rescue, Emil, the good guy werewolf that they rescued from the castle. I think Emil's going to come to them and say that the werewolves or something with the werewolves are going on, to give them some sort of reason to go there and finally kill Kirill. And then I'm going to also have some sort of things having to do with the Keepers of the Feather. Maybe Keepers of the Feather get some notice of they've attacked again. What's going on? There's this whole tree situation. That's probably where I'm going to go down the rabbit hole of. Is there's one thing in the module where if you go to the grapevine where the vineyard is, as soon as you go there and you save it, you start a ticking timer clock for this basically this massive dread tree to come attack the city of Vallaki, and that might be where I pick up there to have this big massive tree attack the city, and that would be wild and cool. And maybe that's where we start the next session off. That's where my head's at. But anyway, there's session 30. It was wild, huge success for them. I think this might be their favorite session. It had a sweeping combat in there 2 different times. This impromptu combat had social encounters where they revoted for mayor, whole bunch of character arc fruition coming through. It was super cool. So I think it might have been one of their favorite sessions for sure, and one of mine as well. But there's the whole rundown. Stay creative, think outside the box.